The spaceport lights flickered in the dusty air as the old alien, Gorzon, stood near. Dock 12, waiting for the human to arrive beside him, stood a tall figure covered in a dark robe. Her face hidden, her hands folded silently. Jace walked through the steel gate, his steps heavy, his jacket stained with engine grease. His face looked tired but sharp, his eyes curious. He had been called without explanation. Just a message from Gorzon, asking him to come alone. Jace stopped in front of the alien, his voice calm and firm. "You said you had something for me, Gorzon gave a deep, slow nod. "The life debt must be paid. You saved me during the reactor breach. I give you my most valuable possession." Jace raised an eyebrow, expecting maybe credits, maybe a rare tool or ship part, but the old alien stepped aside, pointing to the robed figure. "She is yours now." Jace blinked, unsure if he heard right. "What do you mean yours?" he asked. The alien girl did not speak. She only lifted her eyes. They were glowing silver like moonlight on water. Something about her stare made Jace freeze. He looked back at Gorzon. "I didn't ask for anything in return, and I definitely don't want a person." Gorzon looked sad yet firm. "In our culture, this is honor. This is balance. She is not a slave. She is a gift. She carries my name. She carries risk too." Jace looked around. A few dock workers had stopped to stare. Whispers began to spread through the station. People murmured in different alien tongues. Gorzon pressed a small crystal token into Jace's hand. "This will register her transfer. She is now under your protection." Jace opened his mouth to protest, but Gorzon had already turned and walked away, his old cloak trailing behind him. The girl stood still, waiting. Jace let out a slow breath and looked at her. "Do you have a name?" he asked. Her voice came soft like wind through metal. "Solari." Jace nodded slightly. "All right, Solari, come with me." He led her back through the docking ring to his ship, an old cargo hauler patched with different metal plates and humming with strange energy. As they walked, her eyes scanned every corner, every vent, every being that passed inside the ship. Jace showed her a spare room. It wasn't much, just a small bed, a light, and storage space. She stepped inside without a word and sat down. Jace leaned against the doorway, unsure what to say. After a few minutes, he broke the silence. "I don't know what this is. I don't know why he gave you to me, and I don't plan to own anyone." She looked at him, and for the first time something moved in her expression, a small tilt of the head. Maybe confusion, maybe surprise. Jace left her to rest and went back to the cockpit, his mind spinning. What kind of debt involved giving away your daughter? Was she in danger? Was this a trick? He checked the ship's security. The scanner picked up no trackers, no hidden signals, but still something felt wrong. She hadn't brought a bag, not even a datapad, nothing, just the robes on her back. That night he couldn't sleep. He walked back to her room. The door was still open. She was sitting on the floor, not the bed, her hands on her knees, eyes wide open, watching the stars through the small window. "You can sleep on the bed," he said softly. She looked at him again and finally said, "I don't sleep when I'm unsure of safety." Jace sighed. "Well, you're safe here." She lowered her head slightly, then whispered, "I'm not worried about me." The words struck something inside him. He sat down outside her room, leaning against the wall. "I'm just a mechanic, not a warrior, not a hero, but I don't like things that don't make sense. And this whole situation doesn't make sense. Why would an old alien give away someone he clearly cared about?" Solari didn't answer for a long time. Then she said softly, "Because he had no other choice." Before Jace could ask more, the ship alarm gave a soft beep. A motion scan outside the ship. He checked the screen. Just a patrolling drone, nothing dangerous, yet still he felt watched. He turned back to her. "One more question. Are you in danger?" Solari looked at him and didn't answer. Instead, she asked something else. "If you were given a bomb and didn't know how to defuse it, would you still keep it?" Just stared at her for a moment, then gave a tired smile. "Maybe I'd try to figure it out first." She nodded once, then turned back to the stars. Jace stood up and walked away, but her words stayed in his head. Something was hidden, something was coming, and this deal was only the beginning of something much bigger than a debt, much bigger than one girl and one human. Jace woke up early, his boots still on his body, aching from sleeping in the pilot chair. He rubbed his eyes and checked the ship's dashboard. Everything looked Fine, but he felt something strange, like the air had changed since Solari came aboard. The lights in the hallway flickered slightly as he stood up and walked toward the crew section. Her door was still open. She sat in the same position as before, knees drawn up, eyes wide, watching the stars. He leaned against the frame, arms crossed, and said, "I made breakfast. It's not much, but better than nothing." She didn't move at first, then stood slowly, her steps light like she was floating instead of walking. She entered the small kitchen space and sat at the corner of the metal table. Jace placed a steaming bowl in front of her, protein stew with synthetic herbs. She looked at it, but didn't touch it. "You're not going to eat?" he asked. She stared at the bowl, then looked at him. "I don't eat food prepared by strangers. It's not personal, it's survival." Jace nodded slowly and took a big bite from his own bowl, chewing loudly to prove it was safe. He even offered her his spoon. "See, I'm still alive, no poison." She said nothing, but after a long moment, she picked up her own spoon and took a small taste. Her face didn't change, but he noticed the bowl was empty. 5 minutes later, Jace tried to start a conversation. He talked about the ship, its old engines, its patched hull, the time it nearly exploded over a gas moon. He pointed out the broken navigation system, the cracked viewport, the mismatched chairs. He joked about how this ship was more patch than metal. Solari listened but didn't respond. Her silence wasn't cold, just distant, like her mind was always somewhere far away. He brought her a spare cum device just in case they got separated, and showed her how to use it. She didn't thank him. She only took it and clipped it to her belt, then returned to her corner near the ship window, as if that spot held some secret comfort. As the day passed, Jace received a message from a trade broker on station Kalo Prime asking for urgent repairs on a mining vessel, good pay and low risk. It was the kind of job he liked. He accepted it and set course. The trip would take 6 hours, plenty of time to learn more about his quiet guest. He walked into the main room where Solari now sat cross-legged on the floor, her eyes closed, her hands resting on her knees. "Meditation?" he asked. She opened her eyes slowly. "It's a focus exercise to keep thoughts in order." Jace crouched beside her and said, "Look, I don't know what you've been through, but I want to help even if I don't understand it." She looked at him for a long time, then asked, "What do you want from me?" His reply came without thinking, "Nothing. I just want to know who you are." She stood up suddenly and walked toward the engine room. Jace followed, curious. She stopped in front of the main power core. Her fingers traced the edge of the old shield. Then, without asking, she opened a side panel and rewired 2 connections in seconds. The hum of the engine changed slightly. More stable, more efficient. Jace stared in surprise. "You know Starcore systems?" She didn't answer, but her small nod said, "Enough. You are not just some noble's daughter, are you?" he asked. She looked at him and said, "My family was not noble. We were engineers of ancient systems from before the Alliance, from before the war." Before Jace could ask which war, she turned away again, returning to her spot near the window like a shadow that never moved. That night, while Jace ran system checks, he noticed something odd. The ship logs had been accessed. Someone had searched for routes to lost colonies, places that no longer existed on current maps, and the search had been done using Solari's new cum device. He didn't confront her, not yet, but he watched her more closely, trying to understand what she wanted, where she wanted to go. He set up a scan to monitor if any signals were being sent from her device, but found nothing. It was silent as stone. No calls, no messages, just passive tracking. He shut it down and leaned back in his chair, thinking maybe she wasn't running from someone. Maybe she was searching for something. Maybe someone. As they neared the edge of Kalo Prime sector, the ship sensors picked up a strange signal, just a brief flicker, then gone. Jace frowned and reran the scan. Nothing. Maybe a glitch, maybe not. He looked toward the hallway where Solari sat, staring out the window again, like she knew something he didn't. Stood slowly and walked toward her. This time he sat across from her, his voice soft but steady. "If you need to get somewhere, if you need help, I can fly you there. You just have to tell me why." She looked at him, her eyes glowing faintly silver under the low ship light, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was not given to you to pay a debt. I was sent to survive. The ones who come next won't ask, they will." Takaesa's stomach tightened. "Who's coming?" She didn't answer, only said, "You have 2 days, maybe 3, then they will find this ship and me. If you stay, you die with me. If you leave now, I will not stop you." Jace looked at her face, the fear behind her calm voice, the strength behind her silence, and made a decision. He stood up, checked his ship's weapons, and began to prepare for visitors. The stars outside the window blinked in silence as Jace adjusted the power levels of the shield generator. His fingers moved quickly over the console. Every sound in the ship felt louder than usual. The hum of the engine, the soft taps of his tools, the quiet breathing of Solari nearby. She had not moved for hours, sitting still in her corner, like a stone statue, her eyes locked on the void outside. Jace looked at her again, thinking about what she had said. The ones who come next won't ask. They will take her words, stayed in his head, repeating like a warning without a name. He knew something was coming, but he still didn't understand who they were or why they wanted her so badly. He needed answers, and now he needed them fast. He walked into the storage room, opened the hidden compartment, and pulled out a small glowing orb. It was a truth sphere, old tech from an extinct race. It didn't force the truth, but made lies harder to form. He walked back to her, placed the orb between them, and said, "I need to know what you're not telling me. I don't want to hurt you or trap you, but I need the truth, or we're both going to Solari." Looked at the orb, then at him. Her hands remained still in her lap. Her voice came slowly, like a memory. "I was not born in the way most are. I was grown in a temple on the edge of the gray moons, raised not as a child, but as a purpose. I was trained to carry knowledge, ancient codes, old languages, the blueprints of something powerful. My father was not just a technician. He was one of the last Starcallers." Blinked, unsure if he heard right. Starcallers were a myth, old engineers said to control machines with their thoughts. Creators of machines so advanced, they were said to be alive. Solari continued, her voice steady. "A few cycles ago, the House of Rothari discovered my existence. They are a powerful clan who believe control over lost knowledge should belong to them. They sent emissaries, then assassins, then diplomats, then soldiers." Leaned forward, his face serious. "Why you? Why now?" Her eyes dropped. "I am not the only one like me, but I am the last one free. The rest were taken or silenced. My father could not protect me any longer. He paid the only price he could to give me a chance to disappear. When he gave me to you, it was not because you saved him. It was because you were unknown to them, unpredictable, and far from the system." The pieces started to come together. In Jace's mind, he had never heard of the Rothari before, not directly, but he had seen their symbols in outlaw stations, heard whispers of their control over black markets and silent takeovers. If Solari was right, then he wasn't protecting a girl. He was hiding a key to ancient power, and those hunting her would stop at nothing. He stood and walked to the console, pulling up navigation maps. He tapped into deep archives, scanned for hidden coordinates, and locked in a path to the silent expanse, a dead zone in space where sensors failed and no ships passed. It was risky, but maybe the only place to hide for now. As he set the course, Solari walked behind him, her voice soft again. "They will not stop chasing me, not in this system, not in the next." Jace looked at her and gave a half smile. "Then we make them regret trying." She said nothing, but for the first time her lips curved slightly, not a smile, but something close to hope. Hour passed, then the sensors beeped again, not just a flicker this time, but a steady ping. Something had found them, approaching fast. No ID, no transponder. Jace ran a scan, stealth coding, heavy armor, no broadcast signature, the kind of ship that only came for one reason. He turned to Solari. "Get ready for gravity shift, and hold on tight." She nodded and moved to the side rail, grabbing the handle. As Jace pulled the lever, the ship jolted into a sharp turn, engines roaring through the quiet of space behind them. The strange ship gave chase, no warnings, no messages, just pure speed, closing the gap fast. Jace pushed the engine harder. The hull groaned. The lights flickered again. Solari stood calmly in the hallway, her hands gripping the metal rail like she had done this before, like she knew how this chase would end. The enemy ship opened fire. A sharp bolt of plasma ripped through the side wing. Alarms blared. Jace swung the ship behind an asteroid cluster, using it as cover as shots burst around them. The girl moved toward the engine bay, ignoring the shaking walls and falling Wires Jace shouted, "Where are you going?" She yelled back, "I can give you 5 seconds of overdrive, but no more if the core breaks. We both die," he trusted her, and turned the ship toward the expanse edge. She rewired the energy flow, her hands fast, her mind focused, then yelled, "Now just hit." The main thruster, the ship screamed forward faster than ever before. The enemy ship was left behind. Sensors shorted out, stars became blurs, the screens went black for 3 long seconds, then silence. The ship floated in the edge of the expanse, hidden in black mist. Broken but alive, Jace stood up from the chair, breathing hard, and turned toward the engine room where Solari now sat on the floor, her hands burned from heat, her eyes still glowing. He sat beside her quietly. She looked at him and said, "Now you know what I was running from." He nodded slowly and replied, "Now they're running toward us, and we better be ready." Asterisk. The silent expanse lived up to its name. No stars, no beacons, no signals. The ship floated like a forgotten ghost, wrapped in black fog. The metal panels hissed softly from overheating. The lights flickered now and then as power rerouted through damaged circuits. Jace sat in the cockpit holding the cracked control stick, his eyes scanning the blank screen, looking for threats that might not show up behind him. Solari lay against the cold wall, her breathing slow, her hands wrapped in cloth to cool the burns from the engine surge. She had not spoken since they escaped. Her face looked calm, but Jace knew better. Calm faces sometimes hid storms. He stood up, walked to the back, and opened a storage panel, pulling out a med kit. It was old, but had enough for burns. He knelt beside her and unwrapped her hands, gently applying the gel. She did not flinch, not once. "You should have told me the core might explode," he said, trying to sound calm. She looked at him and said, "If I had, you would not have trusted me, and we would be ash." He gave a small shake of the head and smiled, "Only a little. Next time, tell me anyway." She gave a short nod, then closed her eyes. Jace stood and walked back to the front, opening the long-range scanner again. Still nothing, not a whisper of life, not a trace of heat or metal. But his gut said otherwise. The ship drifted slowly through the mist. Like a blind animal in a forest, each sound felt louder: the hum of cooling fans, the soft beep of damaged systems, the gentle clink of a loose bolt swinging in a vent every second stretched longer than the last, until the silence broke with a sharp alarm. Something just blinked into range, a small signal, fast and low, flying below sensor sweep. Stealth tech. Jace sat upright and began rerouting power to shields. He tapped the thrusters, slowly adjusting position. The object came closer. No ID, no heat, no weapons lock, just movement. And then it stopped 50 meters away, hidden in the foggy. Turned to Solari, who now stood behind him without a sound, her face pale, her voice soft. "They found us." Jace cursed under his breath. "What are they waiting for?" She moved to the window and whispered, "They are watching us, deciding if we are worth the trouble, if I am still alive." "The came, still alive." They ship suddenly shook, a soft rumble, not from outside, but from within. Jace checked the system's power levels, dropping life support down 10%, engines offline, auto stabilizer failing. He turned to her. "They're not attacking, they're hacking." Her face darkened. "They want to turn the ship against us." Jace rushed to the manual override, shutting down remote access channels, pulling wires from the wall, opening the main circuit board. The sparks flew as he worked fast. The lights dimmed again, and a voice echoed through the ship, calm, cold, and in a language Jace had never heard, but Solari understood. She stepped forward, answering in the same tongue, her words sharp and clear, her eyes glowing again. The voice replied, this time louder, almost angry. She turned to Jace. "They are offering one last chance. Surrender me, and they will let you live." He looked at her, eyes burning with silver light, and said, "Not a chance." The ship shook again, this time from an external blast. Something hit the side, a magnetic clamp locking them in place. Boarding alert flashed red across the screen. Jace grabbed his tool belt, pulling out an old plasma cutter, not a weapon, but sharp enough. He handed Solari a shock baton and said, "Stay close." The airlock doors began to whine, metal screeching, as forced override tried to crack them open. Jace ran to the backup seal controls and pulled the emergency lockdown lever. Steel walls slammed down around the core system, sealing them in and locking. Others out the enemy would have to burn their way in. They waited in silence as footsteps echoed in the corridors. The air cold, the lights dim, a shadow moved past the hallway. Then another slow, heavy breathing filled the space between sounds. Then came the screech, a sharp cry from something not human. Jace peeked around the corner and saw them, tall figures covered in black armor, red lines glowing across their chests. They looked less like soldiers and more like machines wearing skin, he counted. 2, maybe 3, armed with pulse rifles, scanning each room. One of them stopped, turned toward Solari's door, and raised its weapon. Jace didn't wait. He threw a flash charge and jumped out, swinging the plasma cutter into the first soldier's leg. The metal hissed, and the figure stumbled. Solari moved fast behind him, jamming the shot baton into the second one's side. The jolt sent sparks flying. The third soldier fired, missing by inches. Jace tackled it into the wall, using his weight to slam its head into a steel pipe. It fell with a crack, but twitched, trying to rise. Solari grabbed the rifle and fired one sharp shot, ending it for good. Jace leaned back, breathing hard, his arm bleeding slightly, his chest rising fast. Solari stood still, eyes glowing again. That was only the first team. More will come, she said. Jace nodded and sealed the door again. They needed to move, they needed to run, but more than that, they needed to hit back before the next wave arrived. They looked at each other, both breathing heavy, both marked by the fight, both changed from who they were hours ago. No more running. Now it was time to fight. Asterisk. The corridor smelled like burned metal and old blood as Jace dragged the broken armor unit into the storage room and locked the door behind him. His hands were shaking a little, but his mind stayed focused. The last fight had left him with cuts across his arm and shoulder, but nothing deep enough to stop him. Solari sat by the control panel, eyes half closed, lips pressed together in silence. The stolen rifle rested across her knees, still warm from use. She had not spoken much since the battle, her breath calm, her wounds few, her movements sharp. Jace walked over, handed her a water flask, and sat down across from her, his voice low and steady. We need to talk about what happens next. She opened her eyes, slowly, not with surprise, but with something deeper, like she already knew what he was going to say. Her words came quiet but strong. More will follow. They will not stop until they take me, or destroy everything around me. Jace looked down at the floor, thinking hard, then raised his eyes again. There must be someone who can help, someone with power or reach, or maybe someone who owes you. Solari did not answer right away. Then she reached into her robe and pulled out a flat black card with an old silver mark engraved on its surface. This symbol opened only one kind of door, a bounty network. Jace narrowed his eyes. Are you saying we call a bounty hunter to help you? Her voice was cold. No, I say we give a bounty to someone strong enough to scare them. Idea felt wrong, but clever bounty hunters chased profit, not justice. But maybe that was exactly what they needed. He took the card and placed it on the console, linking it to the ship system and sending a short encrypted message to an old station deep in the outlaw zones. After a moment, the screen blinked and showed a name, only one word: Varnick. Solari looked at the screen and whispered, he used to work for the House of Rothery until they betrayed him. He knows their methods, their weapons, their secrets. Jace raised an eyebrow and asked, you trust him? She shook her head. I don't trust anyone, but I trust what he wants. Revenge. 3 hours passed in silence before the screen blinked again and a voice filled the room, deep, rough, and slow. I hope this is worth my time, human. Jace leaned forward and replied, we need protection, and you need payment. I think we can help each other. The voice laughed, dry and bitter. Protection is not cheap, and neither is betrayal. Solari stepped into view. Her eyes locked on the screen, no emotion on her face. Varnick went quiet for a moment, then said, I didn't think I'd see you again, girl. Last time we met, you left me in a burning lab with one arm. Her reply was sharp and quick. You grew it back, didn't you? Deal was simple: meet at the edge of Dead Glass Belt. No tracking, no traps, no games. The message ended, and the screen went black. Jace leaned back and asked, "Are you sure this is smart?" Solari's answer came without pause, "No, but it's necessary." They jumped through 2 systems, each one darker than the last, staying off major lanes, hiding behind dead moons and signal clouds, until they reached the edge of the dead glass belt, floating rock fields filled with crystal debris and energy storms. Varnix was already there, his ship a black spear hovering in silence, no lights, no movement, but very much alive. Jace docked carefully, weapons ready, heart steady. When the airlock opened, a tall figure stepped inside, armor black as night scars across one side of his face, one glowing red eye, the other a deep gray metal claw on his left hand. Voice like crushed stone. He looked at Solari, then at Jace, then back again. I see you brought a mechanic to a war. Her answer was cold. I brought a human who doesn't run. Varnix laughed, once short and sharp, then walked around the ship, touching walls, scanning corners, testing the air. He turned and said, you're not just hiding from Rothery, you're baiting them. You want them to come. She nodded. Jace stayed silent, trying to read this stranger's true motive. Varnix tilted his head and asked, do you still have the memory shard? The one from the Temple. Solari reached into her cloak and pulled out a small blue cube glowing faintly. Varnix's eye narrowed. That's worth more than your life, girl. That's why they chase you, not for who you are, but for what's inside. Jace stepped between them, his voice strong. You got what you came for. Now help us or walk away. Varnix stared for a long time, then nodded. I'll stay, but when the real hunters arrive, don't expect mercy from them. Expect fire and blood. They set up traps around the ship, motion mines, power surges, false signals. Varnix worked like a machine, never stopping, always scanning. Solari moved between stations, checking shields and weapons, while Jace reinforced the bulkheads with every scrap of metal he had. They had one day, maybe less, before the Rothery found them again. That night, Jace sat alone in the cockpit, looking at old stars, thinking about choices, about a girl given to him as a debt, about a war he never asked for, and about the strange fire now growing in his chest, a will to protect, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. Behind him, Solari walked in, her voice softer than before. Thank you. He looked at her and smiled, tired but real. No need to thank me, not yet. She looked out the window and whispered, then I hope we live long enough for me to owe you more than words. The sky above the dead glass belt shimmered like cracked ice, glowing with electric storms that danced between shattered moons and floating debris. The ship stayed hidden under a metal cliff, its systems silent, its power dimmed. Every screen inside showed warning lights, power low, heat dropping, signal jammed. Varnix stood near the main entrance, watching with one red eye glowing under his mask. Solari sat near the back, her hands moving over the memory shard, unlocking layers of data that had not been touched. And Centurius worked in the engine room, sweat dripping from his face as he rerouted power, trying to charge the shields with backup cores. His fingers burned from wire, sparks. His voice low as he talked to himself, thinking aloud and trying not to lose hope. The storm outside kept growing, each hour louder, each flash brighter. The Rothery would arrive soon. He could feel it in his bones. Not fear, not panic, but something colder, the kind of silence before a war begins. Solari walked into the engine room, holding the shard, her voice calm but full of tension. It's almost ready. The core map is unlocked. Jace looked at her confused core map. She placed the shard into the wall console and stepped back. The screen flashed bright and then revealed a layout of a buried station, old, very old, hidden under a dead planet nearby. The data showed sealed vaults, ancient machines, and a control node marked in red. This is what they want, she said. Not just me, not just the shard. They want what's inside that vault. Jace stared at the map, his thoughts running fast. If we destroy it, will they stop chasing you? She shook her head. If we destroy it, others will still come. If we open it, they might fear what happens next. Varnix entered the room, his voice sharp. Then we open it and we burn the sky. No one spoke for a long time. Then Jace said, we need to go now before they find us again. Varnix nodded and moved to the cockpit, setting the course. Solari looked at Jace, her face unreadable. Once we open it, you won't see me the same again. He gave a small laugh. I already don't see you the same. You were handed to me as a gift, but you became the one thing I refused to lose. The ship lifted from the metal cliff, rising into The glowing sky navigating through the belt like a fish through shattered glass. The storm hit them hard, but Varnix flew with precision, weaving through lightning and falling rock. The dead planet came into view, cold and cracked, its surface black. With scars from old wars, they landed near a broken spire half buried in dust, the vault entrance hidden under layers of stone. Jace and Solari moved fast using pulse drills to cut through rock, while Varnix set up turrets around the area. Motion detectors and traps. The ground shook every few minutes as thunder rolled across the planet. Sky Jace broke through first, opening a steel hatch under the dust-cold air rose from the hole below the vault. Waited. They climbed down into darkness, lights on their shoulders casting shadows on metal walls, lined with ancient markings. The air smelled of dust and forgotten time. Solari moved ahead, her hand glowing slightly as she activated hidden switches. The door at the end opened slowly, revealing a large chamber in the center, a machine like nothing Jace had ever seen floating in the air, spinning slowly, humming with power. This is the source core. Solari said it holds patterns, blueprints, commands for creation. It can build things just from thought. It can grow cities or weapons or life. Jace felt his chest tighten. This much power in the wrong hands could burn entire systems. He looked at her, then asked, "What do you plan to do with it?" She turned toward him, her eyes glowing, not just from light but from something inside. "I plan to destroy the blueprint, but leave the shell enough to prove it existed, but not enough to be used." Again, Jace stepped back, unsure what to say. Varnix entered the chamber, his voice calm. "You're not thinking straight, girl. Power like this doesn't die, it just sleeps. If we hide it, we can control who uses it." Solari looked at him and said, "And how long before you use it?" Tooth. Tension in the room grew thick. Jace stepped between them, his hands raised. "We decide together. We came this far together. We finish this together." Solari walked to the core, placed her hand on the surface. It responded to her touch, glowing brighter. The walls hummed with energy. The machine spoke in a soft voice, old and strange. "Input command required." Jace stepped forward, his voice clear. "Delete internal design data. Preserve external logs." Varnix growled, "That's a mistake," but did not stop her. Solari nodded. The machine paused, then dimmed slowly, its light fading. The hum stopped. The air went still, the chamber silent. Outside, alarms blared. The Rothery fleet had arrived, ships breaking through the belt, descending toward the planet fast. Jace turned to run back up the hatch. Varnix followed, covering their backs. Solari stayed a moment longer, then whispered goodbye to the machine that had once been her reason for everything. Reached the ship as the first blast hit the ground near them. Jace launched the engines. The ship rose through fire and dust, dodging blasts and flying metal. Varnix fired from the turret wings, hitting enemy crafts with sharp bursts. Solari locked the rear shields, her face calm but focused. They broke the sky again, left the dead planet behind. Fire chasing their tail. Space opened before them, silent again, but not empty. Something had changed. Not just the stars, not just the war, but inside them all. Asterisk. The ship floated near a dead moon, hidden behind its shadow, far from any charted system, far from war. Solari sat in the cockpit watching stars pass like soft waves across a silent ocean, her face calm, her hands resting on her lap. But inside, her thoughts raced like fire. Varnix stood beside her, silent, leaning against the wall, one arm crossed, one metal hand resting on the rifle slung over his shoulder. Jace walked in, his shirt torn, his boots scratched from the last battle. His eyes sharp but tired. He looked at both of them, then sat in the old pilot chair, letting out a breath that sounded like a question without words. Solari turned to him and said, "We are safe for now, but safety has become a moving target." Jace nodded, his mind still stuck on what had just happened. A planet left in flames, a machine gone, a legacy erased. Varnix looked at the screen, then spoke calm and slow. "You know they will come again, even if we erased the design, even if we destroyed the core, someone will come looking." Jace leaned forward, resting his arms on his knees. "Then let them come this time. We're not running anymore." Solari tilted her head, her voice soft. "What changed?" He looked at her and said, "I did." Her voice soft. "What changed?" He looked at her, soft. "What changed?" He looked at her and said, stood up and walked to the storage bay, pulling out an old crate marked with rust symbols inside. Was a beacon not for rescue, not for warning, but for calling allies, ones who owed favors, ones who remembered debts. Jace tapped the panel and sent the signal. Varnix raised one brow. Surprised you trust them to answer. Jace gave a half smile. No, but I trust they hate Rothery more. They waited in silence for hours, long hours. Filled with the hum of the ship, the soft clicks of Solari's fingers on the console, and the quiet breath of choices being made. Jace looked out the viewport, remembering the first time he saw her wrapped in robes, silent, given to him like a tool. But now she sat beside him, no longer someone's daughter, no longer someone's debt. She was something else now. Someone who had chosen her path, and someone he had chosen to follow. The beacon pinged a reply, short and direct. 2 ships inbound, armed. Friendly. Jace nodded and looked at Varnix, who only grinned sharp and wolf-like. Guess you're building a crew now. Jace shook his head. Not a crew, a wall between them and anyone who thinks people are property. Solari looked down at her hands, then up again, her voice steady. Then we fight, but only to end the cycle, not to become the next wheel. The ships arrived, one red with long wings, one green with heavy engines, both scarred, both deadly. Inside them fighters, smugglers, hackers, old war dogs. None perfect, none clean, but all willing to stand against Rothery for gold or honor or revenge. Jace welcomed them aboard, shared the plan, defend the empty space near the moon lure. Rothery here, break their line, show them, this chase ends with fire. Next day, the Rothery came not with scouts, not with spies, but with warships black and sharp like blades cutting through space. Their message was short: hand over the girl, or be erased. Jace stood on the main deck facing the screen, his voice calm, his eyes clear. You took from the wrong people, you chased the wrong enemy, you made a mistake. Solari stood beside him, her eyes glowing silver, her hands at her side. Her voice louder than before, then come and finish what you started. The battle began with silence, then exploded into color ships, diving lasers, flashing shields, burning fighters spinning through chaos. Varnix led the strike team, hitting Rothery engines with perfect shots. Jace flew between ships, dodging blasts, drawing fire away from their allies. Solari moved through the ship systems, overriding enemy codes, turning their own weapons against them, her mind a storm of old knowledge and new power. One by one the Rothery ships fell, some exploded, some fled, some crashed into the moon surface. Their message was broken, their pride shattered, and above it all a human ship floated, strong, scarred, but standing, not because it was the biggest, not because it was the best, but because it refused to fall after the battle. Jace stood in the hangar, his hands on his hips, his chest rising slow. Solari walked toward him, her eyes softer, now her steps lighter. She stopped close, her voice a whisper. You broke their chain, not just mine, not just theirs, but yours too. Jace looked at her for a long time, then said, maybe we broke it together. Varnix stepped in, tossing a datapad toward Jace. New location, new target, maybe a new future. Jace caught it, looked at the coordinates, then at Solari, ready for the next run. She smiled, a rare thing, a real thing always. They took off into the stars, a crew born from choice, not from blood, a girl once given as payment, now flying free, a man once alone, now leading not as a hero, but as something rarer, someone who saw worth where others saw weight, someone who chose to protect, not because he had to, but because he believed it was right. And somewhere in the dark space behind them, the last piece of the Rothery war machine burned, quietly sending a signal to no one, a reminder that even the strongest empire can fall when one person decides enough is enough.